Hello again. Even if you wake up, you will want to go to sleep after this presentation, because usually my presentation starts with a note that even if you had a good morning, it will end up soon. So, my presentation is about micro frontends. This is architectural approach, and it's kind of new. It's only 2 years basically old. Like in November 2016, it was mentioned on SoftGram radar, and became quite of a buzzword. It became quite a buzzword for just simple reason, because it is simply kind of a microservices. We'll get there. I will not add too much here, because you already know that I'm CTO and after of Valor Software Company, after of first Angular module in GX Bootstrap, which is quite popular even now, first Google developer expert in Angular in Ukraine, and second one is Max. And both of us became Google developers experts this year, so it's kind of an achievement for Ukraine, I suppose, because for, as far as I know, 2 or 3 million developers in Angular, there are only 200 GDEs, and 2 of them in Ukraine. That's cool. And this year we organized first Angular conference in Ukraine, apparently in Kharkiv. So if you want to find me somewhere, you can find me here for a whole day, or as Valorkin, anywhere basically. And get to the topic. So, who knows what is microservices is? Okay, that's great. Then you know what to do. Thank you for your attention. So, then we will go just a bit for microservices. Why? Because any architectural concept is kind of an idea, it's an approach. And when you go to the presentation, there are several main things why you can get to the conference or to some kind of presentation. You're looking for new information, for new inspiration, or you want to structure whatever you already know, so have structured your knowledge, or you want to get a new viewpoint or on the things you already knew when you came here. This presentation is about getting a new viewpoint on the things you already know. And any concept in architecture, basically, whenever approach like singleton or microservices, any kind of things, there are main parts you have to go through definition, the intention of this concept, or design pattern, who cares, pros, cons, like what it gives to you, what it promises, what you will have to pay for using this kind of concept, because the most part you have to pay with your soul, and the history of this approach, because it evolves a bit. And as you know, microservices doesn't have a definition, so it will be the smallest part. There are a lot of variants of microservices because there are no definition. There are macro, micro, nano. My favorite, of course, Guano services. Everybody was doing them from time to time, and we can find them all over the internet. If somebody have not watched Ace Ventura when they were small, Guano is a bird shit. I don't mean tweeters and tweets, but you know, the Guano. So let's speak about the main parts of the concept. Like there are no description, but there are main characteristics which says what is microservices. So one of those that any microservice you use, they have a common language to communicate. And basically they came up to HTTP and shared memory. Before that there was different and strange approaches like SOAP and things like that, but who cares? Each of microservices could be or should be autonomously developed. So basically, team develops their microservice and doesn't really care about all others. According to this microservice should be independently deployed. So basically, if you have to redeploy the whole application with all microservices on each commit, it's Guano microservices cluster. It's not a microservice at all. And of course, when you think about the microservice, how to say what it does, it's bounded by context, by feature it implements. And of course, it should be easily replaceable. What it means that each microservice could be deployed with different language. Why it's good? You have an old .NET, I don't know, 2007, the dude who was developing it just fired already, and you don't know how to support this legacy crap. What you do, you develop the same API, common language, HTTP, which implement the same feature, but a new shiny language like Go. And you easily replace it. And of course, it should be small in size. That's fine. But what we know about the bad part, what we will have to pay to use the microservices? They create communication barriers, usually between teams. If each microservices is developed independently and feature context bounded, it means that teams who develop on them doesn't have to communicate between each other, except communicating interfaces of communication between them. But that part, when you have to communicate between microservices, provides additional pain, because you have to agree on communication even between your small parts. Testing and deployment of such things became more complicated, because you don't have one big Golang monolith. You have to deploy and test each small part, and then when it's deployed, there could be different versions, and you have to test the whole thing, because user doesn't know that there are microservices, and he doesn't care. So each time you update any of those parts, you have to test it, the one part and the whole thing, eventually. Plus, moving responsibilities between microservices is hard. As we remember, it's feature context bounded. Basically, when you have several microservices, each one is representable for one feature, and then it appears that there are responsibilities you have to share between them, or add some common responsibility to a couple of microservices. Then you will face a lot of pain about it. And of course, there are different architectural approaches, like using modularized approach to developing your code. So basically, what it means that you can develop one big application, but it consists on a lot of independent modules inside of it. You don't split it into independent applications, and it can give you much better approach. Keep it in mind. You will use it later. So micro frontends is just a microservice concept applied to the front end. That is what I said at the beginning, that micro frontends is not something conceptually new. It's just the thing you already knew, but it is different point of view on the things. And current trend is to build a feature-rich and powerful browser application. You develop like one front-end client, single-page application, which resolves and solves all user issues. It has all the functionality. It has everything you ever will need. That's what we call front-end monolith. So basically one big thing, one bug, a lot of bugs of course, and one big rock on top of your microservices. The idea behind of microservices is to split this kind of big thing into small front-end applications, which could be developed independently, deployed independently, and of course could be replaced easily. How to achieve that thing? But before we'll go there, let's, how we get there, the history of the micro frontends and front-end in general. In the past, I would say 10 years, front-end part was developed with huge speed. If somebody was working like from 2003 or old as I am, he remembers the time when JavaScript did not have anything new. Even like 5 or 6 years ago, when I was starting Valor Software, Minstack company development, we was hiring JavaScript developers, and everybody like, okay, but JavaScript is just for front end, some kind of animation on the UI. But eventually, right now, when you speak about JavaScript on front end, everybody understands that it's a huge part. While front end is developing really fast, back end becomes create, read, update APIs mostly. This is why we see the rise of serverless application. Plus, in last years, what we are building, like remember the jQuery HTML pages, some kind of animation, thing like that. Right now, it's not the thing. Right now, you have a huge front-end application which could build it for several minutes. Of course, we remember night builds for several hours, but, the kids. So, there are a couple of ways to achieve a new step in your front end or whatever architectural things. And my favorite one is the evolution path. When you continuously grow your application to achieve a new level of architecture. And the evolution of the front end and development of web in general was moving from one team develops the whole thing, one server which was rendering the front end on the back end and was serving it. It was one application, basically. Eventually, it became some kind of separate thing. There became a front-end team which was responsible just for front-end. But back-end teams understood that when you have that all big and ugly thing which has a lot of memory consumption and a lot of time to develop, and they started to split the back-end into independent parts. And each team, especially when you work in teams like 100 developers in one product, of course they split in small teams, and each one responsible for feature. And that feature mostly developed as microservice or as a module inside of your monolith. But front end is still the rock, not splitted by its features. And evolution path is to make those teams on the microservices, on the features they develop, independent and responsible for features. Those teams should become cross-functional and responsible for the whole life cycle of the feature, not only for the backend part, not only for the database schema, but give them people who know how to develop front-end for this feature and make them independent from other teams. So they can fully take a new requirement and provide it from customer requirements to deployment. And it will not affect other things, mostly. As remember, Guana is everywhere. So, why we should even use this concept? So, this is the part about pros. What kind of profits we will have if we'll use micro frontends. Provides independence. Each team responsible for a feature and nobody can affect the other teams, basically. Of course, you develop faster when you have a smaller part to develop, and you're able to develop new features faster. This team, which is responsible for feature development in micro frontend part, it is autonomous. It works from customer requirements to the deployment. It does not affect it, but the whole scope. Plus, direct communication and coupling by a feature usually leads to a better result when you can handle all the things. When you work with the customers, when you're working with the clients, you better understand what kind of requirements that they have. Because when there are a manager or some other product manager in the middle, as you should know, each person who transmits the information provides to the next level only 25% of knowledge which he actually gets on the first stage. So basically, each point of view, each person who translates the information loses like 75% of information he gets on the first stage. So if a team is able to speak directly with the customer, with the clients, they will know better what features they should develop. And of course, reduced scope. When you have an application which kind of, 100,000 lines of code, 200,000 lines of code, you physically not able to remember and handle in your human memory all the moving parts or the details or domain structure, all that thing just starting to overflow your memory. So you are just simply not able to focus on what you're developing. When you work in micro frontends, you are able to focus on some kind of a feature. You can actually feel, remember, and say at any given point of time on what you're working, what you have to improve to make the thing working better, or how you understand that part. And of course, it's front-end renovation, like evolution path. So basically, when you have a new feature, and the old one was developed in Angular, application was developed in AngularJS, for example, like old 1.2, nobody will give you money to develop it in something new framework. Yeah, it's an issue. We have to upgrade our front end, but customers usually don't want to pay for it. So one of the solutions, like evolutionary, when you have a new feature requirement, you develop it with any front end framework or just with web components, and you deploy it. And you don't care, and customers don't care. They don't have to pay extra for migration. You can switch to new things and whatever you knew at any moment of time, without basically additional proof. When should we use it? Because there are no such things like silver bullets on development. There are always a lot of small parts, and you should particularly know when to use it. When you start a greenfield application like 0.1, you just got the requirements in like a design, and you start developing an application. Should you use micro frontends? I would say no. What you can do to prepare your application or micro frontends or to split your monolith into small parts. Develop by using modularity. When you think about your application, develop using domain-driven design. So basically, you're developing entities and their behavior. And again, it's coupled in modules. Plus, each feature you develop has a module with domain-driven design, and then you will be able to cut the thing off the main application and develop its micro frontends. Of course, interfaces. And this year, it's already became by default that you should use TypeScript. It will be really hard to, provide stable communication if you don't have interfaces. A/B testing. Who knows what is A/B testing? Oh my God, you're so lucky. Most people doesn't know, and they're lucky about it. When you have to provide different version of your feature already existing on the application. And you're lucky if you can decompose one feature from the front end. Basically, you have one monolith. How we do now? We're trying to develop one more thing and then push it that way. If you're able to decompose it into micro front end and make it independent, then you write it to custom elements, web components, some kind of view, for example. And then you're able to, on the back end, switch which version you should serve, because it's independent, you don't care. It sounds hard. My favorite part, when you work on the big application or any, you sometimes have a question, who wrote this part? So, and you always have options to re-implement the application because you cannot find how to solve it. Take an ownership for this part, do git blame, find this bastard by API and kill him. On the big teams, when you want to apply microservices, micro frontends, it's a good thing because micro frontends, like for most people, doesn't mean anything, but microservices is known, is proven concept, and it's easy to sell this idea to the team. So basically, what you plan to do? I'm planning to apply microservices to the front end. Okay. Then sell this idea to a manager because he have to approve, all the thing like moving around. If you are not lucky, just find a new job. So other part is to doesn't really speak with anybody. If you have working on a feature, you can create a model, put there all the feature, take an ownership with your own or with a team, and move it further as a micro frontend, as in part of independent application. So how to implement? As you may already guess, central point of the thing of this architecture, it's not actually code. It's not about frameworks. It's about teams and ownership. Any ability comes with responsibility on behalf. So when we speak about implementing this architecture approach, it's architecture of your teams and ownership and responsibilities. To understand how easily split your applications, there are basically 3 layers. You can split by pages or a page. You can split by components or a set of components, like a module. When you split by pages, there are a couple of options. So basically, you can split several pages or just took one which is responsible for one particular thing and move it and deploy it independently. There are a couple of things like bad parts. What you have to pay for it is how you will later on connect and navigate through these pages. Or split by components. So when you have one component like you developing from a start, one team works to display the data you already have. And second team works on providing additional functionality like checkout flow, which doesn't really relate to the real product. It knows that product exists and it has completely different part of responsibility, payment system, card, and things like that. And there are, of course, some kind of freaky hipsters who trying to play with machine learning and how to provide related information like related products. A revolutionary way to apply this approach is to use web components. Who knows what is web components? I don't want to go really there because any self-respecting hipster or millennial can speak for an hour about web components, so we'll skip it. But there are a lot of things which written. Most important part, when you say web components, is like 2018 year. There are a lot of frameworks which already have them on board and able to provide you web contents. So you don't have to switch to new front ends. If you use Angular or Vue, you can set compile target as Angular custom elements, and you will have your custom elements. Of course, you can use React, but React is lagging a bit behind the other frameworks with implementation of advanced scenarios. You can always go to customelementseverywhere.com and check support of custom elements in your framework. The most important part here is the support, which kind of evolved a lot. Like a couple of years ago, when we were showing this diagram, it was half red because nobody was supporting, only polyfills, and Web Components was version 0. Right now, Web Components is version 1. That's good. It's supported almost everywhere. In Edge, even EE11, you can have 5 kilobyte polyfill and it will be working. So basically, you don't have a problem with support if you're not developing some kind of enterprise for, I don't know, banking who has EE5. The fun part. The fun part is about what you have to pay to use this concept, because there are always downsides in any approach you want to use. The first pain, as I was mentioning, is a navigation, because when you split by pages, not by components, you have to navigate through these pages. And strict boundaries between pages mean that one page does not able to know where the other one. It knows there is a page which implements the feature, but it does not know the road. So, on the one option, like you just able to, of course, hard code the link to other page, because you can communicate with different humans and agree on some kind of routing. One option is hard reload the page. There are nothing scary about the hard reload the page. There are a lot of PHP front end on the web, and it still works like 20 years ago. It hard reloads each time, so it's fine. Other thing, if you develop an application in Angular, for example, you are able to make each page independent module bounded by the context. And there are additional like single SPA mentioned on the bottom when you're able to connect under one soft routing all front ends you use. Of course, you should remember that microservices should be small, so you don't have to use all the versions, all the available frameworks just to play. Building is another thing, because there are only 2 years old approach. A lot of companies working to bring the thing happen, but there are no Docker for front end to build that thing. There are no Kubernetes to build it good. Let's remember, micro front ends is not only about the front end itself, it's about the whole team. So you have to build your microservice backend and front end at the same time. Even if you use Angular, it already provides you an options to, from the box, you have Angular CLI, you can build independently all your micro apps, plus you can able, just with this configuration, build the libraries they will use, but it's still not able to build your backend. They're working on the basal integration, which will allow you to build Java, .NET, or other things, and provide this micro frontend is the whole thing you can use in a Docker, and then inside of the Kubernetes to redeploy it later on. But the whole thing is not yet available to me. So, when we were speaking about navigation, I was mentioning some kind of the one page should not know the link to another one. In microservices world, one microservice should not know about link where it's deployed the other one. They use reverse proxy. So, when the microservice wakes up, it goes to the arbitrage and registers where it is, and the other thing asking for where that small thing is, and pushes through reverse proxy the information. For micro frontends, of course, it's not available yet. Dependencies version is a separate pain when speaking about the topic at all. At the same time, 2 years ago we started to migrate huge thing, huge Guano Serial Builder website from all of like PHP, ASP.NET, and other things they have into Angular, and we started to migrate and apply and split each feature into independent module. It was a fun pain, but we did it. Again, even now when you use a Git, you're not able to really say that this module should not be able to import things from other one. So we split it into different Gits. And when you need to upgrade your Angular version, for example, and one of those modules, you will struggle, because you are not physically able to serve different versions of Angular or React on the same page until you build them that way that they will not pollute any other's code. So it's fun, but again, one hack is available. You develop your models and control. You always have a root application, root configuration, which knows about all your micro frontends, and you can manage versions up there. Communication is a main part of the microservices approach. Up here, web components became a communication language. Doom API is the thing which can connect your elements. And you're able to communicate with, between components from parent to child through bindings on your Doom elements, or when you have siblings, they still can connect through services or shared memory, because it's important, and there are libraries which allow you to communicate between siblings through shared memory, like event bus, like we use Redis on the backend for PubSub, or child to parent through event bubbling. All of it is already available. CSS. I don't know CSS. I wrote it in GX Bootstrap, but I don't know how it works. I hate this crap. Like, it was not enough JavaScript pain, but there are two solutions. I will go quickly. There are global style sheets, which you can, a la Bootstrap, just upload it for all your part. But when you have really monoliths, and then you have a monolith CSS, eventually you will not be able to say which part you can remove. But you can split your CSS by micro frontends, plus with Shadow Doom or any other thing, you can provide CSS directly to your component. But important part for this thing, when you use custom independent CSS, one thing, remember that, forget it. It happens. Common design style, because each component, you have shared elements, and then you started to update style somewhere, and they custom bind it. But you should have your common whole application style guide, like UIKit design approach. If you will not do that, at some point of time, your green buttons will become red, and all other part of application will have still green buttons. When we speak about shared JavaScript, I remember that you could reuse things like just polyfills or CSS that between your micro frontends, share it on the level application. To sum up this talk, there are others, huge companies who already use, like for 2 or maybe even more years, there are approaches and things developed by them, like it will be like whole day to speak about new standards, EAC, SSI, varnish cache, or thing like that, or box approach to combine your front end from independent web components or responsible features. It's developing. And the same thing like with Docker or Kubernetes. Company who will be first to provide your full box of features that you can develop micro frontends will become hot and popular for this topic. So everybody's trying to achieve this. But at the moment, ecosystem is really hot, like magma. Hot, liquid, unstable. If you want to play, you can play it. Play with web components, play with Angular Vue, the things you already know. Don't mix frameworks. It will be really hard to jump off later on. But eventually it will become much easier, because 10 years ago when somebody was speaking about microservices, everybody was saying like, we will die in the building. Most important, this idea is proven to be working. There are nothing new. It's just a new we are just applying this concept to a new part. That's it. It's already working. It's cool. If you work with Angular, remember that Angular was working with and providing all this component level style encapsulation, modulus, component level encapsulation of CSS. It's developed for enterprise, and it's facing like and providing all the things you need for it. So I'm Angular Google developer expert. I'm Angular fanboy, but who knows? And thank you for your attention. Hopefully not drained your brains completely. If you have any questions, you can ask now, or I will be available the whole day here. You can ask me anytime. Thank you.